Let's get over to the economy. We're going to start here with a story that Ryan flagged. Representative Don Bacon from Nebraska sounding the alarm on tariffs, potentially showing some other broader problems in the economy. Let's take a listen.
Most people will tell you this is not emergency powers, what he's doing.
And is it hurting your constituents?
Yes, right. We heard just yesterday, we have a company that makes combines. They're moving all of their manufacturing that makes combines for Canada to Europe. Because of the tariffs from going to U.S. to Canada are too high, they can't compete. So they're going to move all the manufacturing for Canadian combines to Europe. That's hundreds of jobs right there. Iowa and Nebraska are really struggling right now with our farm economy. We're not growing markets for corn and soybeans. The president's making trade deals, but not a single country that I can see has bought more corn or soybeans. And that's what we really need right now. Tariffs aren't working, at least the coffee. I mean, I went to buy coffee when I came back from my apartment. And it was up $4 the bag that I buy, right? People, that's not success right there.
What'd you make of that, Ryan? Don Bacon. I mean, let's contextualize him. He is, you know, to say Republican, it's like
moderate
Republican.
Yeah,
not
right.
Come on, not moderate. Like massively pro-Ukraine.
Liberal Republican.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay.
No, but it's because it's not social. It's like pro-Ukraine, neocon, low taxes, all of that. So I just want to contextualize that for the audience. That said, any retiring Republican has a lot more ability to speak freely. Ask Tom Tillis. So I'm finding it interesting, some of the things that they're saying, potentially about, you know, blinking red lights, not just in the economy, in their district, and potentially for what that could mean for the midterms.
So he also has his finger on the pulse of the economy back in Nebraska.
Yeah, that's fair, of course.
And so I called a couple of combine. There's not many combine manufacturers out in Nebraska, and I found the one because there haven't actually been any news reports.
Yeah.
And from the guy that I talked to on the phone, it seemed like they were like, "Ooh, Bacon kind of."
Oh, he kind of let the cat out of the bag.
We were just kind of letting him know, like, so, and now all the workers are finding out about it, you know, through him telling Manu Raju on CNN. But the company I can report here is called Klaus.
Okay.
It's a German company that was founded in like 1913 that opened its Omaha plant in 1999. Does have hundreds and hundreds of employees. They said they're going to try to get me a statement. We'll see if it comes in by the end of this segment on the details of what's going on. And he said, you know, the impression that he left was that they're closing the entire plant. But if you listen very closely to what he said, the manufacturing that they're doing of combines for Canada is being moved to Europe. So it's not so if you work in this plant and you work on combines for the domestic market, then your job might be safe. But the plant itself is going to shrink significantly because if you are a manufacturer, you are trying to not just build for the American domestic economy, you're trying to export your products too. And think about it, if you're a European company and you're making for the Canadian market, you want to open a plant up in Nebraska so that after you make the combine, you throw it on a truck. Not cheap to move a combine. You know,
of course, yeah, they're
huge.
Right.
But if you're in Nebraska, it's a little bit better. And so for the last 26 years, it made sense for them to make combines for the Canadian market right there in Nebraska.
Right.
And now they're saying because of the tariffs, that doesn't make sense anymore. They already have manufacturing capacity in Europe. They have some France production. They're German companies, so they've got German plants. So they're going to hire more European workers, and then they'll pay a little extra on the shipping just to put them on a boat. Not that much. You get them on the boat and get them over to, and then you sell them to Canada. And we're out, and those Nebraskans are then out of work. At the same time, John Deere, Caterpillar, all these others have said that they are suffering because farmers can't sell. You know, farmers keep talking about how by this time of the year they're starting to do soybean harvesting. Like they have usually locked in contracts for 2/3.
And that's a big
plus.
Chinese market, just to explain to people.
China eats something like 2/3 of the soybeans in the world, and they buy a huge amount of that from the U.S. and from Brazil. And this year, they have booked, and it shows how effectively China can control its commercial sector. They have booked 0 contracts in the United States.
Right.
And now all these American farmers are sitting there with these soybeans. So they are then not buying combines and tractors and other capital upgrades for their farms for the coming years. We can get to. I think the White House responded to that, but we can go to C2 here. Speaking of the kind of economy, and Trump's management of it coming apart, it seems like they recently he was frustrated by. He was ironically frustrated that the BLS data was showing a weaker economy than he wanted, and there were some revisions that were downward. I say ironically because it was those downward revisions and the lower numbers that finally gave him the thing that he wanted, which was the Federal Reserve interest rate cut. But he was so outraged at the low numbers that he brings in a new, BLS guy, absolutely just objectively unqualified for it, and now he's just out here postponing without explanation.
Yeah, the BLS said, here's what they said. The annual release of consumer data set for Tuesday will be rescheduled to a later date. We will update users when more information is available.
Users.
Then they said that the report was being delayed to a, quote, data quality issue and will now be out October 30th. So the day before Halloween. So I guess it'll be a fun day to actually cover what's going on. As you said, Ryan, by the way, great job. Very interesting story there on the combine, kind of a microcosm of some of the ill-conceived way that this is all going down. On the spending level, we're also seeing some of this. Let's put C4, please, up on the screen. Low-income Americans are slashing spending, a worrying sign for the economy. We talked about this a little bit earlier, but just want to continue to hammer it home. Spending is softening in a fragmented way, with wealthy Americans also scaling back in some ways. They say U.S. consumer spending is not just softening overall, it's doing so in a fragmented way. If the benefits and the pressures are not shared broadly, then we're not looking at a balanced or healthy state of the U.S. consumer base. Working class Americans already up against waning wage growth, rising house and electricity costs are burned by any increase in grocery prices, tariff-fueled increase on household staples, apparel, and furniture, increasingly dipping into savings, racking up more debt, pulling back on discretionary spending. Meanwhile, those in the middle and upper income tiers are being more strategic about when to make big purchases, buying in bulk and shopping at cheaper retailers. Moody's retail analysts said that the Walmart, Dollar Generals of the world have told investors they are picking up share among wealthier consumers who are themselves also looking for bargains, and that the highest earners still are the only people holding up consumer spending and accounts for some 70% of gross domestic product. So it's a narrower base. The top 10% of earners making $250,000 or more annually account for some 49.2% of spending in the second quarter. That is up from 45.8% during the same period 2 years ago. So top 10% spending 50% of the money.
Yeah, and
that's a problem.
And some of that change is going to be sticky. Those rich people get into Walmart, they're going to be like, this place is pretty good.
Yeah, maybe I'll stick around.
They got a lot of stuff.
I
in
wouldn't
here for
go,
cheap.
it's pretty good, but it does the job.
Good isn't the word.
Right? Yeah. I love Walmart.
But what's really punching people in the face, and we can put up this next element, I think this is C5, are people's electric bills.
This is really a totally under-discussed thing. Nobody in the mainstream media is talking about this.
It's crazy.
Yeah,
it's
crazy. Totally crazy.
If you look, and so 2022, you guys have been watching this program, you can probably figure out what happened there. Russia invaded Ukraine, and that sent natural gas and broadly, sent electricity prices absolutely skyrocketing. They then level off. After that, you're looking at a confluence of things, data centers and the gobbling up of electricity by AI being a significant part of it. And as we warned about on this program, while Trump and Republicans were working on the big, beautiful bill, they actively stripped away subsidies for clean energy. Over the last several years, clean energy has represented something like 70 to 80% of new energy brought onto the market. So if you're not bringing on that new energy and you're not actually ramping up, it's not as if people think Biden was stopping them from drilling or whatever. No, they were drilling like crazy. Like you're not actually going to drill anymore. And ironically, and Saagar, you'll like this, the way that, so we've cut off, we're telling Europe and other places, do not buy Russian natural gas, buy our natural gas. And as a result, we are paying more for natural gas.
Yes, I
like,
highlighted this, Ryan.
Yes.
I talked about this until I was blue in the face at the time. I go, why are we exporting natural gas? We're the one, we make all the
Why are we
natural
screwing
gas.
Russia?
Why don't we just use it for ourselves? And they're like, oh, well, that's not how the global commodity markets work. And I was like, okay. I mean,
well then tell this chart that's not how the global commodities market.
Well, no, they were like, well, you can't do that because it would disrupt the global commodities market, et cetera. And I was like, okay, well then put a tariff or something on it and make them pay more for it, at least, right? To make sure that we have to pay a little bit less. Nope, that's totally out of the question. Let's all just eat it so that the Donbass region can be 5% more Ukrainian for a month. That's basically what the U.S. policy was. It still drives me nuts. It's not all Ukraine. It was largely back in 2022. But nowadays, it's data centers. We got to go and put C6 up here on the screen because this, again, is one of the most under-discussed issues, which is these data centers are popping up everywhere. Actually, here where we live, Ryan, this is data center capital of the world because of the government. And Amazon and all these people have all these contracts. The government has the largest data centers in the world on top of the big tech companies like Meta and Google, everybody in the AI race.
NSA here.
NVIDIA, yeah, we have the NSA and all of that. But I'm talking about, it's not just a Northern Virginia problem or a Maryland problem now. It's like a American. It's down in Texas, which has its own grid that's separate from everybody else. But what we know is that increasing numbers of states are under major pressure from households and from normal businesses who are saying, hey, these people are buying all the power and our rates are going up like crazy. And these data centers actually strategically often pick low tax, more rural areas. Which, why wouldn't you? Yeah, right, if you're for business purposes. But that puts a huge strain on the, like Texas specifically, right? Like, look, Texas, the grid situation down there, it's a disaster. We can fight about that all day long, whether we should go nuclear, renewable, whatever. The point is we need more power, all right? And what is interesting about it is that it's starting to become a ground up campaign of just normal people looking at their electric bills and like, hey, this is out of control.
Yeah.
This is totally crazy. And it's California, Texas, Wyoming, you know, I mean, places out in the middle of flyover country, which often will have a data center park there, and then 2 to 3 years later, they're just watching the spike go up. And actually, they have all kinds of other problems too with data centers that are nearby. And it's the trade-off where, of course, it's great for Silicon Valley, it's great for NVIDIA's stock price, but maybe it's not so great for the rest of us. And you know, maybe if you're going to be buying, if you're going to be building these data centers and supposedly pumping all this money into the local economy, it's like, well, maybe you should be required to invest a little bit into power and all this other stuff. But we would never think of that, would we, Ryan?
No.
Yeah.
And also, like the way that a lot of these counties work, it's legal for some of these county commissioners to be consultants.
Yeah, you're right.
At the same time, and state lawmakers, like in Florida, for instance, are literally able to draw a salary as a state lawmaker and also be lobbyists for, you know, some data center company or whatever. And so then you only have to, if you are building a data center somewhere in Wyoming, you'll give 3 county commissioners $100,000 each for a consulting fee.
Yeah.
What do they do for the consulting fee? They vote yes on your data center, and then the company writes the rules so that they get access. They get privileged access to cheap energy, but also reliable energy. Like I just said if, but you know what? It's when. It's when we don't have the power to feed both the residential homes and the normal businesses in that area and the data center will keep running and y'all will get a rolling blackout.
Yeah, one of the highlighted stats here, which is just to put this in perspective, some of these data centers require more electricity than cities the size of Pittsburgh, Cleveland, or New Orleans, make huge factories look tiny by comparison, pushing policymakers to rethink a system that has spread transmission costs among classes of consumers proportional to electricity use.
Yeah, and then they rethink and they're like, let me look at that contract, and they're like, oh, this contract is not good for us.
Time for my daily China does it a better way. I follow these AI researchers and others that go to China and they kind of report back for the U.S. financial industry, just to check back. And they're like, hey, what's China doing? And they ask, because they presume that everybody else has our problems, they're like, what are you guys going to do about power? They're like, what do you mean? We have plenty of power. They're like, we're not worried about power. Like, this is they said, quote, electricity here is a solved problem.
Right.
Now, it's dirty. pretty, all right? I mean, not all of it's nice. Some of it's solar, which is filthy to create.
They get a lot of
Some
hydro,
of it's
too.
hydro, some of it's coal. They don't give a shit whether it's coal, nuclear, or anything. They don't have any of the Sunrise people campaigning against nuclear power plants or any of that stuff. But the point is that that's possible elsewhere in the world. They don't think about power. They think it's cheap, plentiful, and the reason why that's important is that if you want to build a future on top of something, that's what infrastructure matters for. That's what the original grid system of the United States of America was kind of laid out after the post-New Deal era, is like the backbone of which all of us can build better lives on top of, not to be kind of, commoditized and bought entirely by some data center and then spread the costs, to the rest of us.
And the big beautiful bill actively, aggressively targeted renewable energy projects for destruction.
That's true.
Like it said, and it was loosened up a tiny bit at the very end, but it basically said, if your project is not operational, like producing energy within like 60 days of the passage of this bill, you're done. Forget it. And it's like, well, which is none of them. Like that, you don't just, people are trying to figure out ways to fake it. Like, okay, well, we'll plug in like a car battery to a solar panel and say we're producing energy. But that's basically, but most companies are like, all right, well, America is not a place that supports the development of new energy projects. So we're going to go somewhere else.
The big beautiful bill thing, I don't disagree with you. I think that was a very stupid way.
Which also funded AI out the.
I was going to say, it's not all like it also. It's my issue more with it is that they go all in on solar and wind. I've done endless number of segments here why solar and wind I think alone are not the answer. I think nuclear is the obvious answer. By the way, the Trump administration, hey, make big promises on nuclear. Still haven't seen a damn thing happen on it, just so everybody knows. So it's like they are delivering. But the net effect is basically a gift to the oil and gas industry, which, look, I'm not ideologically opposed to the oil and gas industry. I just don't think it's nearly as efficient as a lot of other different types of power.
And they don't need subsidies.
Exactly. It's just like everyone I think should compete on its own, and we can make the most efficient type of power. It seems to me that nuclear is obviously the answer, and yet we have all kinds of ideological reasons for why that doesn't happen. But that's kind of the issue: is if you just take away and you don't add, then prices are just going to continue to
That's
go
the key
up.
thing.
That's my problem.
The bill tilted the playing field against clean energy. It wasn't that it said, okay, we're all going to compete on a level playing field. It's like, no, we're going to make it easier for fossil fuels and subsidize them. We're going to make it harder for this. It's like, why are you making it harder for any energy when
we just need more power.
Power.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're getting rolling blackouts, and we're just going to have to deal with it.
I don't know if we're going to get rolling blackouts, but we will get rolling. What happened before the rolling blackouts in California? It was like sky high bills, right? People were paying like $400 in like 2002 money, which is like $2,000 today for their electric bills. Man, I don't even know. What a crazy time. The whole Gray Davis, Arnold Schwarzenegger thing, that was wild. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.